I have an ability to tell good people from bad. Good people smell fragrant. Bad people smell rotten. But the one exception is the rumored cruel and tyrannical emperor. He smells bitter. When no one was looking, I secretly stuffed a bunch of sugar cakes into his hands. He held the sugar cakes and said to me coldly, "The last person who gave me candy wanted me dead. What about you?" I said, "I want you to have a sweet, long life."
Welcome to a journey of love and destiny under the moonlight. I'm the voice behind Moonlit Love Stories. Now let us step into the story.
I am the only daughter of the Minister of Rights. Since childhood, I've had this ability to judge people's character. My nose is different from ordinary people's. I can smell the scent on a person. Good people are fragrant. Bad people are rotten. Father said if others knew about my ability, it would surely bring disaster. So I rarely went out and never talked much to anyone. It wasn't until I reached marriageable age that my parents realized my nose wasn't the only thing different. My mind was different too. The physician said my intellect hadn't matured. I didn't really understand, but it probably meant I was a bit simple. From then on, my parents stopped keeping me locked up at home. They not only hired a tutor for me but also started taking me out on excursions. I was of course overjoyed. Lon, remember, if you smell someone who is rotten, don't tell anyone. Wait until you get home and whisper it to Mother and me. Every time before going out, Father would remind me over and over. Today was the same. But today was also different. Mother said today was the Emperor's birthday celebration, and all officials of the 4th rank and above could bring their families to the palace to offer congratulations. I knew about the Emperor. A few days ago, when I went to the opera house with Mother, I overheard people discussing him. I couldn't remember much of what they said, only that the Emperor was an especially bad person. Then he must be especially rotten. To test this conclusion, when everyone knelt and bowed their heads to welcome him, I deliberately lifted my head and sniffed. Perhaps because not a single other person had raised their head. My gaze easily met his across the crowd. He wasn't what I expected. He wasn't rotten. And he was exceptionally handsome. Handsome like an immortal from a painting. Before I could think more, Father hurriedly pulled me down, kowtowing to the ground in fear and trepidation. I knew I had done wrong again. Before leaving home, Father had told me not to look directly at the Emperor. Although I didn't understand why. I thought if someone was good-looking you should look more. Just like the flowers in my courtyard, I was happy to stare at them every day. The Emperor didn't blame me, nor did he blame Father. What those people said wasn't true. He wasn't a bad person, but he wasn't a good person either. I couldn't smell any rotten scent on him, nor any fragrance. It was strange. But Father wouldn't let me sniff anymore. After stuffing a pile of sugar cakes into my arms, he asked Mother to take me to stroll in the gardens. The palace gardens were much bigger than the ones at home. Besides many flowers I had never seen before, there were also many rockeries, perfect for hide and seek. While Mother was chatting with the other ladies, I hugged my sugar cakes and slipped into the rockeries. I didn't know if I was too good at hide and seek, or if Mother was too slow, but she took a long time to find me. Instead, I bumped into the Emperor. He was standing behind a rockery, the cool moonlight falling on him, making him look even more handsome. I thought if the immortal in the moon from the stories was a man, he must look like this. At that moment, a delicate young woman stood opposite him, her voice trembling. "Your Majesty, whatever you desire, this subject's daughter is willing to give." "Oh? What does we desire?" The Emperor laughed softly. The woman replied, "If your Majesty is willing to welcome this subject's daughter as Empress, the Li clan will naturally prioritize your Majesty in all matters." They said many things I couldn't quite make out, and didn't really understand. After the woman turned and left, the Emperor suddenly turned and looked towards me. He was smarter than Mother. He found me immediately. "Your Majesty, how did you know I was hiding here?" I jumped out from behind the rockery, tilting my head and smiling at him. His handsome brows furrowed slightly, and he walked towards me. Only when he got closer did I smell his scent. Not rotten, not fragrant, but a faint bitter smell. Like the bitterest medicine the doctor prescribed for me last time I was sick. The Emperor walked up to me, looked me over for a moment. Finally he asked in a light voice, You are Minister Shan's daughter, Shenlan? I nodded, still staring up at him. Why was he bitter? Before he could say more, I couldn't help but ask, Your Majesty, have you ever eaten candy? He seemed surprised by my sudden question, pausing for a moment. Seeing he didn't answer, I blinked. What do you ask for? He finally asked after a long moment, because he smelled so bitter, like he had never eaten candy before. But Father said I mustn't tell anyone about my ability to smell people. So I took out the sugar cakes from my embrace and painfully offered him half. I'm treating you to sugar cakes. I just had some. They're very sweet, they must have used a lot of sugar. I hoped after eating them he wouldn't be so bitter. He looked down at the sugar cakes in my hand and laughed. Shenlan, you are quite bold. I smiled sweetly. Thank you for the compliment, Your Majesty. He paused again. Just then I heard Mother anxiously calling my name not far away. She must have thought I was lost because she couldn't find me. I'm not that stupid. I shoved the sugar cakes into the Emperor's arms, hearing his cold voice say, Once someone else gave me sugar cakes, but she wanted me dead. Ah. I jerked my head up, meeting his ice-cold eyes. And you? He asked me. I didn't know why, but he looked both cold and bitter. Even more pitiful than the little wet puppy in the courtyard before. I stood on tiptoe wanting to pat his head, but he was too tall. In the end, I only managed to give him a light hug. I wish for Your Majesty to have sweetness and a long life of 100 years. Lon Lon. Mother's voice was getting closer. I stuck out my tongue, quickly let go of the Emperor, lifted my skirts and turned to run back. After a few steps, I remembered I had more to say. I turned back to look at the Emperor still standing frozen in place and said softly, That sister from earlier was lying to you. Don't believe her. Because she smelled rotten. When she was doing bad things, the stench was especially strong. After saying that, I ran off without looking back so he wouldn't ask me how I knew. How did you know? The Emperor sat on a high chair, propping his chin with one hand, leaning down to look at me. Just moments before, as my parents were preparing to take me home, we were stopped. Then I was brought to this splendid golden hall. Only the Emperor and I were in the hall. I noticed the bitter scent on him hadn't faded. Instead of answering, I asked, Your Majesty, didn't you eat the sugar cakes? The Emperor's beautiful eyes shifted, and he stood up. As he approached, the bitter smell grew stronger. We have heard you are different from ordinary people. He stood before me looking down. There was an emotion in his eyes I didn't understand. I thought he knew about my ability to smell people and swallowed nervously. But then he continued, reached marriageable age but with an unawakened intellect. So that was it. I breathed a sigh of relief, then immediately widened my eyes to defend myself. The tutor said I'll awaken soon. Just yesterday I managed to recite a poem. The Emperor laughed softly at this. Just then the eunuch who had brought me in earlier hurried in and knelt not far away, speaking softly. Your Majesty, Lord Shun is kneeling outside the hall, requesting an audience. My father. I turned to look at the eunuch. The eunuch kept his head down, silent. I looked back at the Emperor. He ignored the eunuch, looking only at me, a smile tugging at his lips. Your father truly dotes on you. I nodded vigorously, my eyes bright. Of course. My father is the best father in the world. Then Lon Lon. He bent down close to me, calling my name in an extremely soft voice. Is truly fortunate. We have no father. So bitter. When he said this, a thick bitterness enveloped him. Then let my father be your father too, okay? I instinctively tried to comfort him. He froze slightly, his pupils darkening as if ink had dripped into them, so dark they seemed capable of sucking me in. After a long time he asked, Is that possible? I nodded. Yes, of course. He smiled, looked up and said to the eunuch not far away, Let Shen Feng enter. The gift Minister Shen presented to us today, we are most satisfied with. Father had just knelt on the floor when he heard the Emperor say this. Thank you for your Majesty's favor. That night pearl was specially transported from the South Sea, a 1 in 10,000 quality. Father kowtowed in reply. We are not referring to the night pearl. The Emperor glanced at me, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. We are referring to the apple of your eye, Minister. Father trembled at these words, looked at me, then quickly kowtowed again, speaking urgently. My daughter is not like others. Her intellect is that of a child, her actions rash. If she has offended your majesty, I beg your majesty to punish me instead." The emperor still wore a slight smile. He raised his hand and placed it on my head. He said, "You are too modest, minister. In our view, your daughter is exceptionally clever." He was the first person to call me smart. He must be a good person. Once I managed to dissipate the bitterness on him, I was sure I would smell his fragrance. Thinking this, I looked at him and smiled. He also looked down at me, the hand on my head gently ruffling my hair, his voice soft and low. Lon Lon also said she would let her father be our father too. I smiled and nodded, but when I turned to look at father, his face was deathly pale, and he kowtowed forcefully again, his head hitting the floor. This subject deserves death. It is my failure in teaching my daughter that led to her speaking nonsense before your majesty. I beg for your majesty's punishment. Father. I hurried over, my eyes reddening as I saw the red mark on his forehead from kowtowing. Father, did Lon Lon do wrong again? As I spoke, I frantically blew on his forehead. Father grabbed me, making me kneel with him, and continued to the emperor. My daughter's intellect is unawakened, her speech improper. It is all my fault. I beg your majesty not to blame her. The emperor paced to us and reached out to help me up. Minister Shun, you exaggerate. The emperor's smile was beautiful, though his eyes were still dark. We find Lon Lon pure and lovely. Her words please us greatly. She should not be punished but rewarded. Father reacted as if hearing dreadful news, sinking to the floor. Seemed I had done wrong again. After returning from the palace, Father didn't sleep all night. Mother held me, her eyes red. Mother, I didn't tell the emperor my secret. In Mother's arms my eyes also reddened. Clearly, the emperor had said he would reward me and Father. Hearing this, Mother held me tighter. Mother knows. It's all Father and Mother's fault. I didn't understand why they were at fault. Until the next morning, when an imperial edict arrived from the palace. The emperor kept his word. The palace servants brought several chests of gold, silver, jewels, and treasures. The lead eunuch, after reading the edict, smiled at me. Consort Chun, 3 days from now is an auspicious day, perfect for entering the palace. I looked up at him and blinked. My name isn't Consort Chun. It's Shen Lon. He still smiled. You are Consort Chun, personally bestowed by His Majesty. After handing the edict to Father, he led the group out in a grand procession. Mother, who had held back all night, finally cried when she saw the edict. I quietly asked my maid Dodo, "What is Consort Chun?" Dodo's mouth twisted, and she said with a sob in her voice, "She is the emperor's consort." My eyes shifted. Like father and mother? Dodo paused, thought for a moment. Roughly, yes. Then why were they crying? I turned to look at my parents, reached out to wipe the tears from Mother's face. Mother, don't cry. I'm willing to be the emperor's consort Chun. Mother cried even harder. Over the next 3 days, several matrons came to the house, mostly to teach me the etiquette required after entering the palace. The rituals were complex and hard to learn. I stumbled through, barely managing to learn some. The last matron stood before me for a long time, looking into my eyes, her face turning red, then pale, then red again. What are bedroom matters? I opened my big eyes, looking at her innocently. She bit her lip and finally only said, "Young lady, just remember when in bed, you must listen to His Majesty." I nodded. And other times? Also listen. Then bedroom matters weren't that special after all. On the day I entered the palace, both father and mother cried. I cried along with them. The emperor arrived while I was still sniffling. He walked up to me and asked in a light voice, "Are you so afraid of being our consort Chun?" I looked up at him with red eyes. He was different from last time, wearing a bright yellow robe that made his face resemble the piece of jade father kept hidden in his study. "Your Majesty, I'm hungry," I answered between sobs. It was true. I had been busy since early morning and had only eaten 2 small pastries. The emperor didn't expect that to be the reason for my tears. He paused, then chuckled softly. His smile was exceptionally handsome, and his laughter was pleasant to hear. "Find some food," he said, looking down at me, then added with a curl of his lip, Make it sweet. The eunuch guarding the door hurriedly acknowledged the order and rushed off. Soon, several plates of pastries were brought in. My eyes lit up at the sight. The emperor sat down beside me, watching me eat several pieces before asking, "You're not afraid of me?" I shook my head, my mouth full of pastry. He didn't smell rotten. Under the strong bitterness was a faint fragrance. It smelled nice. "But they are all afraid of me," he said with a smile. I swallowed the food in my mouth. "Then it must be because they are bad people." As I said this, the bitterness from him drifted into my nose, making me frown slightly. Maybe people were afraid of him because he was too bitter. "Your Majesty, you eat too." I brought the sweetest sugar cake to his lips, smiling as I coaxed him. "This one is the sweetest." He lowered his gaze to look at the sugar cake. A gleam seemed to pass through his dark eyes. After a long moment, he finally opened his mouth slightly and took a small bite. Eunuch Li, not far away, watched wide-eyed. I waited for the emperor to swallow before asking eagerly, like seeking praise, "Is it sweet?" His handsome thin lips curved up. "Sweet." I quickly stuffed the rest into his mouth, taking the chance to lean in and take a deep breath. The bitterness seemed to have really faded a little. But only a little. After that, no matter how much I fed him, it didn't change much more. Finally, he sighed, looking at the pastries I was pushing towards him, somewhat helpless. "Shin Lan." I paused. "Huh. If you can't finish them, just throw them away. No need to stuff them all into our stomach." With that, he glanced at Eunuch Li and said coldly, "Take them away." But I wasn't full yet. As Eunuch Li stepped forward, I quickly grabbed 2 pieces and stuffed them into my mouth. The emperor looked at my bulging cheeks, chuckled helplessly, and reached out to gently pinch one. "Did Minister Shen starve you at home?" "No." But my mouth was too full to utter a single word in protest. I could only smell the bitterness on the emperor, which had faded a little more. I had indigestion. I really hadn't eaten that much. The emperor stood up when I hiccuped for the 3rd time. The matron had said that once I entered the palace, my fate was tied to the Shun family's honor and disgrace. If I made a mistake, father and mother would be punished. Thinking of this, I quickly covered my mouth, not daring to hiccup again. "We have eaten a bit too much. Accompany us for a walk." The emperor looked at my shoulders, trembling from suppressing hiccups, and spoke lightly. I stood up immediately. "Okay." "Hic." The emperor's lips twitched slightly. He turned and walked out. I covered my mouth in frustration and hurried after him. Consort Chun's robes were particularly complicated. Layer upon layer of skirts blooming around my feet with each step. They looked even more beautiful than the peonies blooming along the path. Focused on my feet, I didn't notice the emperor stopping suddenly in front of me. "Ah!" I bumped solidly into his back, lost my footing, and fell backward. But before I hit the ground, he turned, wrapped an arm around my waist, and pulled me back. An intense bitterness, mixed with a faint sandalwood scent, spread from him. It smelled wonderful. He frowned slightly. Before he could speak, I caught a faint rotten smell coming from not far away. Instinctively, I pulled him to hide behind a large rock. "Shoo!" Seeing he was about to speak, I quickly covered his mouth with my hand. Sure enough, after a moment, footsteps drew nearer. "You say His Majesty went to Jinghe Palace?" a delicate, sharp voice asked. It was the woman who had spoken with the emperor that day. I carefully peeked out from behind the rock. The woman was dressed in lavish palace robes, followed by a crowd of servants. The lead palace maid bowed her head. "Yes. This consort has been in the palace for 2 days and hasn't even seen His Majesty. That idiot just entered the palace today and has already received favor." "Why?" The woman angrily snapped a peach branch beside her. The maid whispered. "Her father is the Minister of Rights. His most successful student topped the imperial exams this year." "His Majesty probably." Before she could finish, the woman interrupted. "Besides our Li family, who else can be his support?" "Your Highness." The maid quickly looked around and whispered. "Be careful with your words." I was confused by what they said. I only understood that they mentioned my father and father's favorite student. After they walked away, I looked at the emperor beside me. He had obediently let me cover his mouth, while Eunuch Li behind him looked pale, as if the sky were falling. I had done wrong again. I, I. I quickly let go of him, my face crestfallen. Your Majesty, can you please only punish me, not my father? He looked down at me, his thin lips curling slightly. He reached out and straightened my crooked hairpin. We will not punish you. His voice was soft and coaxing. But can Lan Lan tell us how you knew Li Xingji was coming? And why you said she is a bad person? I blinked. He trapped me between himself and the rock, leaning down slightly. I swallowed, ducked under his arm, lifted my skirts and ran back. I'm a bit sleepy. It's time for bed. But after I bathed and lay in bed, the emperor came again. Afraid he would continue questioning me, I grabbed the covers and pulled them over my head. Lan Lan is asleep. She knows nothing. After a moment, the emperor's soft laughter came from beside me. I cautiously pulled the covers down, revealing only my eyes to look at him. The candlelight behind him flickered, casting his shadow on the floor. He stood with his hands behind his back, bending slightly with a cool smile. Lan Lan is quite bold, going to sleep by yourself without attending to us. Attending? Serving the bed? The matron had mentioned it. Bedside service meant accompanying the emperor to sleep. Tonight was my first time not sleeping at home, so I was originally a little scared. But if the emperor was willing to sleep with me, I definitely wouldn't be afraid. Thinking this, I scooted over, making space beside me, my eyes shining as I looked at the emperor. Lan Lan is timid, of course she is willing to serve your majesty at bedside. The emperor froze for a moment, then the corners of his beautiful eyes curved. He asked me, Lan Lan, do you know what bedside service means? Of course I knew. Who did he think he was looking down on? The matron said to listen to the emperor when in bed. So when the emperor said, don't move around, I really didn't dare move. Do you really know what bedside service means? The emperor, seeing I hadn't moved at all, couldn't help but ask again. I turned my head and blinked at him. Isn't this it right now? He chuckled again, the pleasant sandalwood scent spreading from him. It didn't smell very bitter anymore. Sleep, he said softly. I nodded, closed my eyes, then opened them again. Your Majesty. Can I move now? If I had to stay still, I couldn't sleep. You may. His voice held a trace of laughter. I relaxed, loosened my body, and turned to face the emperor. His nose bridge was high, the corners of his mouth suppressing a smile. So handsome. Your Majesty, I called him again. He didn't open his mouth, just made a soft sound. What is your name? I rolled over to look at the canopy above, somewhat puzzled. They all call you Your Majesty. I'm sure that's not your name, just like everyone calls my father Lord Shun or Minister Shun. The emperor opened his eyes and also looked up at the dark, indistinct-colored canopy above. An intense bitterness washed over me. I couldn't help but turn my head to look at him. His thin lips parted slightly. Chee. I didn't catch it. Huh. He also turned his head, his cool gaze meeting mine. My name. Chee. The tutor hadn't taught me many characters yet. I didn't know which characters were. But I still put on a mature expression and nodded, imitating others, patting Chi-Yi's shoulder. It's a very good name. Chi-Yi's expression froze for a moment. A long while later, he moved my hand away and said lightly, tomorrow we will find you a tutor. Huh. More studying. Chi kept his word. The very next day he really found me a female tutor. The female tutor had just finished paying her respects to me when a palace servant announced that Consort Shu had arrived. This subject will begin lessons for your highness tomorrow. I take my leave for today. The female tutor didn't linger, paid her respects and turned to leave. Her faint fragrance faded as she left, replaced by a spreading rotten smell. Li Xingji led a group of people, passing the female tutor as she entered the hall. Dodo told me that Li Xingji is the daughter of General Li Yu of Northern Prestige, and also the current Empress Dowager's niece. She had been named Consort Shu by Qi 2 days before I entered the palace. She was also Qi-Yi's consort. Why could Qi have 2 consorts? I have some free time today and came to sit with you, sister. I hope you won't find me a bother. Li Xingji glanced at the departing female tutor and sat down on a nearby chair. The unpleasant smell invaded my nose. Instinctively, I stood up to leave. Father said to stay far away from people who smell rotten. But before I could leave, Li Xingji grabbed my hand. She said angrily, "You dare ignore me?" I was suddenly afraid but couldn't break free from her grip. I could only plead, "Let me go." "Xinlan, what do you think you are? Don't think just because you've received His Majesty's favor, you can disregard this consort." She tightened her grip on my hand and sneered. "Do you think His Majesty would really like a fool like you? He's just using your father. When your father is no longer useful, he'll be the first to kill you and your father." I glared at her, lowered my head, and bit her wrist hard. When she cried out in pain and let go, I grabbed Dodo and retreated several steps. "Don't speak badly of His Majesty. He would never kill me or my father. You dare bite me?" She was furious, raising her hand to slap me. I bent down to dodge, then pulled Dodo and ran to the door. "You hurt me first, and you spoke badly of His Majesty. Serves you right." I stuck my tongue out at her and turned to run outside. But as soon as I turned, I bumped into Qi. I didn't know when Qi had arrived. Probably because Li Xingji's stench was too strong, it covered Qi's bitterness. Consort Shu is truly exceptionally clever, having even figured out what we should do in the future. Qi shielded me in his arms, looking at Li Xingji in the hall with a faint, ambiguous smile. Li Xingji's face turned deathly pale, and she immediately knelt down. This consort didn't mean that. Her shoulders trembled slightly. She looked up, her eyes tearful and delicate. "It's just that this consort has been in the palace for many days, and your Majesty has yet to visit my palace." Qi didn't speak, only held me as he walked inside. Passing her, I couldn't help but pinch my nose. Qi asked me, "What's wrong?" I answered instinctively, "She's a bit smelly." As soon as the words left my mouth, Li Xingji's face on the floor grew even paler, a look of disbelief on her face. Qi, however, seemed to find it amusing. He chuckled softly before saying to Li Xingji, "Now you know why we haven't visited you?" Li Xingji stumbled out of Jinghe Palace. After she left, Qi released me. "You are quite clever. Who knows how long she'll scrub herself after returning." But I wasn't happy just because he praised me. "Qi, why do you have two consorts?" I stepped back a few paces, putting my hands on my hips. He seemed surprised by my sudden question, pausing. Dodo behind me gently tugged my clothes, wanting me to watch my words. I had completely forgotten the teachings of father and the matrons. I just felt deceived. "Then how many consorts does Lan Lan think I should have?" Qi's voice was clear and light, carrying a hint of laughter, very pleasant. I liked him a lot. I liked his appearance, his voice, and the faint sandalwood scent on him. That's why I was willing to be his consort Chun. Thinking of this, I grew even angrier. "Just one, of course." I lifted my head and glared at him. "Father only has mother as his wife. Why can you have two?" Hearing this, he laughed again, but seeing my full-faced anger, he quickly suppressed his smile. "I am different from your father," he explained. I didn't understand. "Why different?" He walked over, put his arm around my waist and sat us down on the couch. "I am the emperor. The emperor is different from everyone else." I understood even less. Sitting in his lap, I forgot to be angry. Isn't the emperor the most powerful person under heaven? Can't he do whatever he wants? He sighed. "Qi, are you unhappy?" I noticed the bitterness on him had thickened. From yesterday until today, I had thought for a long time. It seemed Qi's bitterness wasn't related to whether he ate candy or not. Whenever he smiled, the bitterness would fade a little. So maybe he was so bitter because he was unhappy. He didn't answer my question, just picked up a strand of my hair and twirled it around his finger. "Li Xingji said I was using your father. Aren't you angry?" I shook my head. "That day I said I was willing to let father be your father too. Father would dote on you like he dotes on me. If it's something good for you, father would surely be willing to do it. That doesn't count as using." I turned and leaned on his shoulder, sniffing his scent, my voice soft. "Besides, you are a good person. You wouldn't kill me or my father. You are the first person to say I am a good person." Qi twirled the strand of hair in his hand, his voice somewhat low. "That's because they can't smell your scent." I patted his back. "Then I'll tell you every day from now on." "Okay." The bitterness faded a little more. Satisfied, I let go of him and asked again, "Can the emperor really not have only one consort?" He laughed. "Not for now." Angry, I jumped off his lap and pushed him out. I heard Li Xingji scrubbed for 2 hours after returning that day. After that, she not only searched everywhere for incense and perfumes but also bathed 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. When Dodo told me this, she was beaming. "Your Highness is truly someone who doesn't act often, but amazes everyone when you do." I had just learned this phrase from the female tutor. Probably meant praising me for being amazing. I looked proud and accepted her praise. "But Your Highness, you've been angry with His Majesty for quite a few days now." Dodo started persuading me again. "What if you wear out His Majesty's good temper?" These days Chi had sent me many rare and interesting things. I refused all of them. I lay on the bed as if sulking, covering myself with the quilt. At most, I just won't be his consort Chun anymore. He still had consort Shu anyway. Maybe there would be other consorts in the future. And the female tutor said the master of the rear palace is the empress. So many consorts. She was a super mega ultra big bad egg. Dodo, seeing my indignation, didn't say anything more. Just tucked me in and retreated. I don't know if it was because I was too angry, but that night I had a terrible nightmare. Waking up with a start, I felt extremely scared. Hugging my pillow, I went out but couldn't find Dodo. Finally, I ran to Chi's hall. Chi's bedchamber was very close to mine. Eunuch Li, guarding the door, came up to me. "Consort Chun, why are you here?" The hall was dark. Chi had already gone to bed. "I'm here for bedside service." Drowsy, hugging my pillow, I tried to enter. Eunuch Li, coming to his senses, quickly stopped me. He looked troubled. "Your Highness, bedside service requires His Majesty's summons." But I was scared to sleep alone. I was about to speak when a wave of rotten smell drifted from inside the hall. My sleepiness vanished instantly. I pushed past Eunuch Li and charged in. "Chi, there's a bad person," I shouted. At that moment, a figure standing by the bed raised a sword, about to stab down into the bed. I only had time to throw my pillow at them. The pillow hit the person but didn't stop their sword from plunging into the quilt. "Chi!" I burst into tears. When I was learning needlework before, even a pinprick hurt. Such a long sword stabbing Chi must be incredibly painful. The person by the bed looked down at my pillow, cursed softly, pulled out the sword and thrust it towards me. I stumbled back in fear, tripped over the threshold. Before I could hit the ground, a dark shadow swept over from the side and pulled me into an embrace. One hand covered my eyes, the other threw a short blade. I only heard a muffled grunt, then the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. "Drag them away." Chi's icy voice sounded above my head. I happily pried the hand from my eyes and looked up. It was indeed Chi's handsome face. Eunuch Li stood not far away, bowing respectfully. "Your Majesty," Consort Chun said she came for bedside service. Chi raised an eyebrow. He asked me, "Not angry anymore?" I puffed out my cheeks, pulled away from his embrace, and without a word, pulled him, looking him over carefully. Seeing he hadn't been stabbed full of holes, I started crying again. He seemed startled, his cold fingers frantically wiping the tears from my face. "Were you scared? If you had been sleeping in my place tonight, wouldn't you have avoided the bad person?" I looked up at him, tears in my eyes. Eunuch Li silently retreated and gently closed the hall doors. The cool moonlight poured in through the half-open window, all of it falling into Chi's eyes. His originally pitch-black, lightless pupils seemed dotted with scattered stars. "Shen Lan." He pulled me into his embrace, his hand stroking my head over and over. "Now I finally know this world isn't entirely filled with demons, monsters, schemes, and treachery." I sniffled. "What are demons and monsters?" He chuckled softly. A rich sandalwood fragrance spread around him. It smelled wonderful. "You don't need to know. You just need to know that you are different from everyone else." I pushed him away and asked again, "Then can you have only me as your consort?" He pondered for a moment before saying, "Not yet. Big bad egg." She was a bit busy. I was also very busy. Every day, I had to study characters and writing with the female tutor, and was surrounded by a group of imperial physicians for acupuncture and bitter medicine. I didn't know if it was because I drank too much medicine, but lately I couldn't really smell the bitterness on Chi anymore. "Dodo, smell me. Have I turned bitter too?" I frowned at the bowl of medicine Dodo brought. Dodo thought I didn't want to drink the medicine and persuaded me patiently. Your Highness, His Majesty is doing this for your own good. Didn't you say yourself that reciting texts has become much easier lately? Yes. This was all medicine to treat my simple-mindedness. What the imperial physician said wasn't much different from what the doctor father hired had said. Mostly that my mother had a difficult labor when I was born, and coupled with being shut in at home for over a decade, it led to my unawakened intellect and mental stagnation. No one wants to be a fool. I endured it, pinched my nose and drank the bowl of medicine. Just as I was putting a piece of candied fruit in my mouth, a palace servant hurried in. Your Highness, the Empress Dowager emerged from the prayer hall yesterday. She requests your presence at Sinang Palace to pay respects. Dodo said the Empress Dowager is Chi's mother. She often abstains from meat and prays to Buddha, spending half of each year in the prayer hall. My father is Chi's father. Chi's mother is naturally also my mother. I quickly had Dodo pick out a beautiful dress for me to change into, freshened up, and followed the palace servant to Sinang Palace. So you are Consort Chun? The Empress Dowager, kind-faced and benevolent, sat on a couch, smiling as she looked at me. I performed the proper etiquette. Before I could speak, I smelled an indescribable rotten smell. It came from the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager asks you a question, and you dare not answer? Li Xingji, standing to the side, immediately said sharply. Her rotten smell mixed with the Empress Dowager's, permeating the hall, making me feel somewhat sick. But on the way, Dodo had repeated the rules to me many times, afraid I would make another mistake. I had originally thought the Empress Dowager, being Chi's mother, would surely be like Chi. Now it seemed not. I said softly, replying to the Empress Dowager, this subject is Consort Chun. Good child, so lovely. No wonder the Emperor likes you. The Empress Dowager wore a smiling expression. Come sit by us. I looked up at her, then at Li Xingji's resentful face. Both were bad people yet so different. I obediently sat by the Empress Dowager. She took my hand and said to Li Xingji, you may go back first. Li Xingji glared at me, full of reluctance, but still paid her respects and left. After she left, the Empress Dowager asked me, tell us, do you like the Emperor? Of course I do. Seeing me nod, she continued, we heard that some days ago the Emperor suffered an assassination attempt, and you were there. Were you terribly frightened? I shook my head. We stayed in the prayer hall for half a month. Coming out, we saw the Emperor has grown thinner. As she spoke, she raised a hand. A palace servant brought forward a small bottle. You may not know, the Emperor wasn't raised by us since childhood. He holds some misunderstandings towards us. Her tone was sorrowful. Seeing you by his side brings us great comfort. This is medicine we found to treat his heart condition. He absolutely refuses to take it. Could you help us find a way to get him to take it? I looked at the small porcelain bottle. His Majesty has a heart condition? I asked. She nodded. He's had it since childhood. Every time it acts up, the pain is excruciating. If he doesn't take this medicine, he probably doesn't have many years left. We had no other choice but to ask for your help. Not many years left? My eyes widened. He hates us, so he refuses to touch or accept anything from us. You must never tell him this came from us. When Chi came to see me, I was already in bed. Seeing him approach my bedside, I scooted over to make room for him. He sat on the edge of the bed and asked, you went to see the Empress Dowager today? I sat up in bed. Chi, the Empress Dowager said you have a heart condition. The Empress Dowager was a bad person. I was afraid she was tricking me. He paused, then under my nervous gaze nodded. Does it hurt? I crawled closer to him, reaching out to feel his chest all over. It was hard. Not at all like me. He found it amusing, caught my hand, and with a gentle pull, brought me into his embrace. If Lon Lon blows on it, it won't hurt. His eyes and brows were curved, much more handsome than when I first met him. I nodded, found a comfortable position in his arms, and started blowing on his chest. After just 2 blows, he raised his hand and covered my mouth. Before I could react, he flipped over, placing me back on the bed from his embrace. I saw his gaze deep, the corners of his eyes and brows carrying a softness like warm sun melting snow. His prominent Adam's apple bobbed. "Does it still not hurt?" I asked, my voice muffled. He quickly removed his hand and sat up on the bed. After a long moment he sighed. The sandalwood scent on him was strong, mixed with a hint of sweetness. Lon. His voice, for some reason, held a slight hoarseness. "Have you been taking your medicine properly lately?" This made me angry. "Do you think I'm too stupid?" I asked, puffing out my cheeks. He looked down at me, laughed as if helpless, his fingers gently tracing my brows and eyes. Lon isn't stupid. But I hope you can grow up quickly." "Nonsense. I'm already of marriageable age." As I sat up, ready to argue with him properly, my eyes caught the small porcelain bottle I had hidden in the corner of the bed. I had almost forgotten the important matter. "Your heart condition. If you don't take medicine, do you only have a few years to live?" I stared at him, asking seriously. He didn't expect me to bring this up again and seemed at a loss for words. I leaned over to look around, confirming only the two of us were in the hall, then took out the small bottle from the bed corner and gave it to him. "Look. Can this medicine treat your heart condition?" He took the small bottle, opened it and smelled it. "It can," he said lightly. I froze. Had I misjudged the Empress Dowager? "But it hasn't added poison. You die before the heart condition is cured." He looked up at me. "You got this from the Empress Dowager?" I nodded, my face full of anger. I knew it. She's definitely a bad person. The bitterness that had just started to emanate from him dissipated upon seeing my expression. He smiled. "How did you know?" Of course I smelled it. But I couldn't say that. She's your mother. How can she be so bad?" I was truly angry. When I get a pinprick, mother feels terribly sorry for me. Why would Chi's mother give him poison that would kill him? She laughed coldly. This time the bitterness coming from him was incredibly intense. So bitter I couldn't help but hug him and gently pat his back. "It's all right, Chi. My mother will definitely love you," I said, trying to soothe him, heart aching for him. "And I will love you too." Now I understood. His bitterness wasn't from not eating candy, nor from unhappiness. We lay in bed together, neither of us speaking. I could only smell the bitter scent emanating from him, enveloping his entire being. I never had a mother. I don't know how much time passed before I heard him speak. I turned to look at him. His eyes were open, staring at some unknown point, his dark pupils exceptionally cool in the night. "That year, my father took a fancy to her and forcibly brought her into the palace. Once was enough to conceive me. She hated me and abandoned me in the cold palace. My father also hated me, ignoring my existence." His voice was low and hoarse. "In the 3rd year they had another child. That person was held in the palm of everyone's hand since childhood. The crown prince praised by all, the person she was willing to turn me into a weapon to protect. Clearly we are both her children. Why was I the ant to be trampled, while that person stood high above, waiting only to ascend the throne? Since I am the violent, immoral prince of Yen, the treasonous villain everyone has the right to kill. Then I covered his mouth. So bitter. Bitter than all the medicine I had ever taken combined. I had candied fruit to eat. He did not. I couldn't help but lean forward and kiss his reddened eyelid. He trembled slightly, looking at me in disbelief. I tilted my head, looking at him. "You are the wise and mighty emperor. At the beginning of the year, I heard the servants at the mansion say there are far fewer beggars on the streets now. I'm sure it's all you're doing." Only then did I finally learn the character in his name, which meant calamity. When the female tutor taught me, she didn't explain much. Probably because she knew it was Chi's name and didn't dare say more. But I really liked this character. I wrote Chi's name all over a page. While I was admiring my masterpiece, Chi walked in. Preceding him was the scent of sandalwood all over him, mixed with a bit of sweetness. "Chi, look." I proudly showed him the paper with my writing. "This is my best handwriting." A couple of days ago he said my writing looked like ants had crawled across the page. Today I would surely surprise him. His eyes indeed lit up and he smiled. "In the world today, the only person who dares to call me by my name and fill a whole page with it is probably you alone." I slid naturally onto his lap, setting the paper down on the desk. So Yuri is this character. I said it was a good name, didn't I? I like it very much. He glanced at the character. Because it's easy to write? Just a few strokes. Indeed, much easier to write than other characters with the same pronunciation. I felt a bit guilty but pretended to be calm. That's not it. He didn't expose me further. Instead, he picked up a brush and wrote several Shunlanes in the gaps on the paper, filling the entire page. I was very pleased, even thought about finding a place to hang it. Your Majesty, Lord Shun has arrived. Eunuchly came in from outside, glanced at me, his expression softening. Lady Shun is also here. This was the first time Mother had come to see me since I entered the palace. Chi went to the imperial study to see Father, while Mother was brought to Jinghe Palace by a palace servant. Lon Lon. Mother's eyes reddened as soon as she saw me. She held me, looking me over. Have you been wronged in the palace? I nodded. Mother's eyes reddened further. Was it His Majesty? It's him. I pulled Mother to sit down, puffing out my cheeks angrily. He said he can't have only me as his consort for now, and said he's different from Father. Mother, please talk to him for me. Mother's hand trembled, the worry in her eyes fading by more than half. And also, he always comes very late for bedside service. Sometimes I'm already asleep when he comes. Also, he's not bitter anymore, but the medicine he makes me drink is very bitter, and he lies saying it's not. I launched into a relentless tirade, listing every one of his crimes without mercy. The more Mother listened, the more she found it strange. Finally, after looking me over again, she said meaningfully, "No wonder you've gained some weight. Not that much, right?" I shared half of my daily pastries and sugar cakes with Chi. Not only did Mother not feel sorry for me, but as she was leaving she even urged me, "Be good to His Majesty." I had a feeling. Mother seemed to care more about Chi now. When I told Chi about this, Chi laughed for a long time. Finally, he held me and said softly, "Lon Lon, I can't wait any longer. The play must begin." Chi fell ill. The imperial physician said it seemed like his heart condition had worsened, but also seemed like poisoning. I stayed by Chi's bedside for several days, crying until my eyes were dry. The imperial physicians couldn't think of a way to save him. Even more anxious than me was Li Xingji. She not only found some doctors from among the common people, but even invited Taoist priests to perform rituals. But no matter what method was tried, she didn't wake up. She, however, for believing in witchcraft, was dragged to the cold palace by a single word from the Empress Dowager. That night, the imperial physicians were all withdrawn from the hall. All the servants guarded outside. Only Qi and I remained in the hall. The wind howled outside the window. The Empress Dowager walked in slowly. She still had that kind, benevolent appearance. The marks of time had added a touch of kindness to her beautiful face. The day has finally come. She stood in the light of a candle, her voice as dry and raspy as the candle itself. I turned to look at her. "Was the medicine you gave me poisonous? Everyone says your mind is dull, that you're nothing but a fool." She took a few slow steps toward me, her gaze dark and unreadable. "Who would have thought that only your innocent heart could make him lower his guard? You really thought if you didn't give him the medicine it would be fine?" She laughed, the kindness on her face cracking, revealing a trace of viciousness. "You made him grow greedy. With you he wants to live even more. Where there is desire there is a weakness." I fell to the floor. "Why do you treat him like this? He is also your child." "He is not," she retorted sharply. "He is misfortune, a disgrace, a punishment from heaven upon me." Tears I thought had dried up welled again. I hurriedly went to cover the ears of the person on the bed, but the intense bitterness still appeared. Chi opened his eyes, his thin, pale lips moving slightly. "So you want to kill me?" The Empress Dowager, unprepared for this turn of events, stumbled back in fear. "You?" Chi sat up, his gaze coldly falling on her. "So, after I received praise from Father that one time, you gave me a poisoned sugar cake? So, after I killed all who stood in Qizong's way, you had Qizong kill me first upon taking the throne?" The Empress Dowager pointed at him, furious. "You are not worthy to mention Zonger." Qi laughed. I looked at him with a pang in my chest. His eyes were bloodshot, as if they might spill red tears at any moment. You don't really think you hid it well, do you? His voice was like the cold snow of deep winter. You think Li Xingji entered the palace, and the Li family wouldn't show some sincerity? The Empress Dowager froze, then seemed to realize something. What have you done? You watch me day and night, wishing for my early death, but forgot what kind of scum your maternal family is, didn't you? He spoke word by word. For the position of Empress, the Li family is willing to do anything. Have you forgotten how you entered the palace? What have you done to my Yener? The Empress Dowager murmured in disbelief, turning to leave. Qi smiled. Naturally, the same as his father, accidentally fell into the lake. Drowned. Hearing this, the Empress Dowager collapsed to the floor. She looked at Qi distraught. You demon! I should have strangled you back then. Compared to mother, your son is still lacking. The Li family, for conspiring to harm the late crown prince's orphan, was sentenced to execution of the entire clan. The Empress Dowager, having been instigated by treacherous individuals and attempting to act against the emperor, was placed under permanent house arrest in the prayer hall. This move the female tutor had just taught me, cutting the firewood from under the cauldron. Sorry for making our Lon Lon cry so much. You've even lost weight, Qi murmured distressed, pulling me into his arms. His broad hand gently pinched my waist. I pretended to nod. Then you have to compensate me. What does Lon Lon want? I thought about it. I want you to have only me as your consort. Okay. He finally gave an answer different from before. Not as a consort. As empress. I was in a great mood, patted his shoulder. Then I grant you bedside service tonight. His eyes darkened slightly. Dodo and Eunuch nearby suppressed their smiles and lowered their heads. Lon Lon, do you really know what bedside service means? After a long time, Qi asked me again. I knew. Wasn't it just sleeping? This sleeping is not that sleeping. The female tutor's face turned red. She coughed several times before handing me a few booklets. The booklets were filled with images of men and women lying on top of each other, doing things I couldn't understand. Seeing the curiosity and eagerness on my face, the female tutor's ears flushed red. Tell His Majesty I really can't teach this. After saying that, she fled Jinghe Palace as if flying. If even the female tutor couldn't teach it, it must be very complicated. This piqued my interest in these booklets even more. So much so that I didn't notice when Qi arrived. Qi took the booklet from my hand. His beautiful eyes seemed to hold a pool of spring water. Combined with his sweet scent, it suddenly made me feel thirsty. Where doesn't Lon Lon understand? Let me teach you. His voice was like falling feathers brushing against my heart. I felt an inexplicable restlessness. Seeing my ears turn red, Qi chuckled softly. It seems Lon Lon has grown up. This night was different from all previous ones. The candlelight flickered, its shadows falling on the disordered clothes on the floor. I felt as if I had been thrown into the clouds. I don't know how much time passed before it stopped. In a daze I held Qi and murmured, Qi, you're finally not bitter anymore. What's not bitter anymore? The smell. Good people are fragrant, bad people are rotten, but Qi was bitter. Qi buried his head in the crook of my neck. A long time passed just as I was about to fall asleep. I heard him say softly, because Lon Lon is sweet. Like a piece of melting candy, wrapping all the bitterness and turning it sweet.
Thank you for listening Beneath the Moonlight. If this story touched your heart, remember to subscribe to Moonlit Love Stories for more tales of love and destiny. Until we meet again, may the moonlight keep you company.